am a wife and a mother and an insurance agency owner, a friend, and a PTA advocate. I am so excited to talk about all of the things that I find most precious here within our community, within our lives, and within our faith, friendships, and relationships. Here on Heather's Most Precious. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Heather's Most Precious. I am so excited to introduce my guest today, Meghan Splawn.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. I just said your name like Meghan Splawn. Like it's like this huge announcement. Meghan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a food editor. I've been in food media for 15 years and done everything from Food Network television to satellite media tours to cookbooks, magazine articles. I wrote for a really long time for a website called thekitchen.com. And now I co-host a podcast called Didn't I Just Feed You with my friend and colleague, Stacey Billis, which is, as you might imagine, about feeding families. And so I also am a mom and a wife and a friend and all of those lovely things that you are as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. I've loved it. Meghan and I got to connect through a podcast group that our friend Michael hosts once a month. And when we hosted it here at the agency, and it was just a fun way to connect. I thought I was only hosting because we hadn't launched yet. And then just the connection that I feel with you is at least on my side. You're like, she's like, crazy. I know.
I'm like,
I'm calling it right now. So you've obviously going back, right? You've been in food and editorial, all of that for such a long time.
For such a long time.
All of your career. What was the biggest transition from that into this podcast?
Well, so there's this thread, I guess, in my career, which is I worked for Alton Brown for a long time, who's like a long-time Food Network celebrity. And while I was working with him is when I met my husband and when I started a family. And what I felt like was missing when I had my daughter was food media that was really speaking to parents from the start. It wasn't a time where people were talking about fed is best, and I was really struggling with breastfeeding, and I couldn't find resources when I wanted to move her into food that were outside of the pediatrician and the lactation consultants, a more wide variety of information about feeding babies. And then as she got older, just the slog of being a working parent and packing lunches every day and doing breakfast and having snack. It's a full-time job, and a lot of times it's one partner or the other doing it. There's not good division of labor. And I learned, being enmeshed in Food Network, in food media I should say, that there weren't outlets that were speaking to parents really specifically. In fact, some of the big magazines at the time were having non-parents write easy weeknight dinner ideas
as if they knew.
They knew. And then it'd be a Caesar salad where you have to make the Caesar salad dressing with anchovies and make an emulsion, which is really easy for me because I have a culinary background, but every other parent, and also even as a person with a culinary background, I just want to know what's the best bottled Caesar dressing that I can buy. And also how to serve that salad that in a way that my kids might actually try it and not just be ew, salad.
Because it's green.
Yes. So when I started writing for Kitchen, I was one of the few moms on full-time staff. And so I got to start writing a lot of content for parents, about meal planning, which I really love to do and is sometimes my tether in busy, crazy times. And then I met in real life at a food professionals conference. My friend Stacey, we had been friends on Instagram. The story is that we drank a little bit too much whiskey and we were like, we should start a podcast. There's no food podcasts for parents out there. And I thought that was something we said under the influence. Right. And the next morning she emailed me. She's like, okay, so here's what we're going to do. And that's sort of that's awesome. How our relationship has gone up to a certain point where she's like, I'll figure it out and we'll do it together. And it's been 5 years now. That's amazing. Of doing Didn't I Just Feed You? Yeah. It's been a really incredible experience. We have an incredible community of listeners too, which I just is an unexpected joy and the thing that makes it such a worthwhile project.
Absolutely, knowing that you're a piece of their family, right?
And also just to not feel alone. You're like, oh man, I gotta pack 180 school lunches this year, and there's like 1,095 meals in addition to that in a single year,
right?
For families,
and they get it. And so when you're like, oh, this is exhausting, you're like, okay, it resonates with somebody there.
Yeah.
And I get that, especially for me, summer is the worst. Because first of all, the mom guilt, because when you work and or you're trying to get away to record, and you're like, everyone be quiet. That's when everyone's like, oh, you wanted to talk to me, didn't you?
Right.
Like, or let me pull out my lounge toy.
Snack. Or I'm going to get out the giant box of goldfish and drop it on the floor.
And I'm like, that was $13.79. No, it's too much. Yes. And so I think just the constant, right? Didn't I just feed you? This is where your title comes. It's just the constant of like, how did you digest that already? You literally just ate 14 granola bars. How do you still want something else?
Right.
But you're right. It's like 17 bags of chips. I'm like, this can't be. Like, there has to be a better way. So I love that you've helped to organize this and give a resource. And you're right. There are so many. I mean, I like Lakers nearly 14 now. He will this weekend. And I was always never saw anyone breastfeed outside of my neighbor who had twin babies, and I loved them growing up. But I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And for me, yes, fed is best. Please do not read into this. But for me, I always was excited to be the mom in all of those ways. And thankfully, my pregnancies were really rough, but nursing was the one thing that I was really good at. And I was so proud of myself. But back then, I mean, it was still not what it is now, where it's more accepted than it was then, right? It's still not where it should be, but then, yeah, now, I mean, I think of when Oakley, which our younger sons are very similar in age, but when they came along, then we do have these, hey, you can start doing these table foods at 8 months, and, all of these, let's do the baby-led weaning. Yes, there it is. And so being able to do all of those things, how much that changed just in those 5 years in between.
Isn't that wild? I was talking about this with someone recently, how even since Emmett was born, which was like 8-9 years ago, like Oakley, the recommendations for how to introduce allergies or allergens has changed so much. And if you are continuing to grow your family, it's a wild ride to be like, oh wait, what's the most updated information for babies? And then also, how do you follow that into feeding preteens, which is a whole other wild ride. And do you ever feel like feeding preteens is a little bit like feeding a toddler again?
Oh,
where it's like more pickiness, they're eating more frequently. It's all those things again. The vegetables are the worst.
And you eat one thing. Like, I bought a bulk pack of something because it's all you ate last week. In 2 days, you finished the whole bulk item. And then this week, you don't like it.
Oh, that's like the Murphy's Law of feeding
What
kids.
Is happening?
As soon as you're well-stocked in the thing that you think they love, they're over it.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. But then when you don't buy it for a few weeks, it's like, you never have anything that I like to eat. I'm like, oh my goodness, you can't win sometimes. Yeah. What is your favorite? I know you talked about meal planning. Do you like to prep on a certain day of the week? Is it like a store and then prep for the week? What does that look like?
Okay, so I think of meal planning and meal prep as two sides of the same coin.
Okay.
So you can use them individually or together. I'm not necessarily a meal prepper. I'm more of a meal planner. So for me, that really just looks like before I go to the grocery store, looking at what we have in the house that needs to be used up, looking at things in the pantry that I can utilize. And then some people like to plan Monday, we're definitely having this, and Tuesday, we're definitely having this. I like to plan 5 dinner ideas for the whole week, including, we have soccer tonight, we're just going to get drive-through on the way home.
Okay.
And then grocery shopping for those things. If I have time and to meal prep anything, I am going to make a batch of cookies or brownies or a pound cake, something that's joyful and a little treat in our week, rather than roasting veggies or making a salad dressing. I think those things are really great, and we often recommend for people who are really busy to do that. But I also have the privilege of working from home, so it's a little bit easier for me to just start the slow cooker in the middle of the day, or do a little bit of meal prep when my kids are doing homework. I don't have to do it on one single weeknight. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What is the biggest thing, and I'm sure you talk about this on your podcast, which I would encourage y'all to go check out, and what is maybe one of the styles of recipes that's kind of the most favorite for all of your
for all
audience?
Well, so that's the thing. There's not it's just like breastfeeding in some ways, right? Like or feeding babies, I should say. There's not a one size fits all thing that works for everyone. Like Stacey and I just did a quick weeknight pasta episode this summer, and we thought going into recording, like, we're really aligned on what that means. And then when we got into the conversation, it's totally different things for the two of us. Like when I say quick weeknight pasta, I mean one pot pasta, which is a really great tool for a lot of families. And Stacey, because she has two like teen boys and they're super active, she's like, oh, that is not enough pasta for my family. So what I have to do is like make the sauce still quickly, but separately, and then do like a double pot of pasta just to feed them. So one pan pastas are really great. We love sheet pan meals at Didn't I Just Feed You? We have a whole episode about that where we talk about like how to be efficient with it, because sometimes it's not just like putting everything on the pan and throwing it in the oven, but putting things in at different intervals, or maybe even utilizing 2 sheet pans so you get a little variety of flavor. So that's another big thing that we talk about on Didn't I Just Feed You? If you just cook the things, even if you love cooking, if you just cook the things that your family will eat, you're going to get burnt out on cooking for them every night so fast, because you're not going to have any food joy. Right. And you're going to be bored of eating the same things over and over again. So we do talk a ton about how, like, yes, make things that your kids will like, but here's 1 or 2 things that you can do to your plate or your bowl to make them more flavorful, and also just building more flavorful meals overall. Because a lot of the pickiness or like aversion to vegetables that kids have, not all of it, because there's like legit picky eating, but it's just about like making the vegetables taste delicious for them to try them and be like, oh, actually green beans are really good. Yeah,
for changing the texture, which you can do with various ways of cooking.
Yes,
to change the texture for them too. And I think that for me, my older son was really picky until about kindergarten. Then he started eating school lunch because all the kids eat school lunch. I was like, I wanted a packet. And then he will try anything, eat anything. My younger son ate everything until about age 2, and then decided that he hates texture. So he would eat beans like they were candy. Yes. And he was like, just no, none of it. And so he still is my pickier eater, but he is willing to try things. And if you only do the same thing, you're never introducing something new. And you know how fast the bulk food, you just heard that story.
Right. You know how change like every week, and then over the course of time every year. And yeah.
And they may, another way to get nutrients, right? They may then like something, or if you don't, then it's like, okay, we've checked this off. Let's not try it again for a little while. So.
Yeah, and then when we try it again, we'll try it a different way. So what are ways that your boys do like vegetables? Because I think that's a big question for a lot of parents, is like getting them to try a variety of fruits and vegetables.
Of course. My boys are much more fruit, and I blame my husband for that. Nick, that's for you. So he is a huge fruit eater, doesn't do a lot of vegetables. Now, he'll do them fried, but I'm like, you could fry styrofoam and anybody would eat it, right? That doesn't count.
It does count.
It does, to an extent. But I'm like, let's look at the food you eat. Fried okra, fried green beans, fried
all those things are delicious.
They are. But he's a big salad eater. I have to be in a very strict mood for salad, and salad just doesn't digest well often. And at least for me, that's not my favorite thing. Now, my older son, Laker, loves salads as well, and I'm grateful for that. But he'll also like raw carrots, raw cauliflower. Like my family does not like things cooked. I could be a vegetarian. I love anything and everything, but except for broccoli because I'm allergic. But put it in the oven, eat it raw, anything, and I'm down. And Oakley will do fruits, my younger son, but it's still we're trying kind of towing the vegetable line.
Okay.
And we make him try things quite often. But I also don't want to traumatize my child. So it's that how far do you push as the parent, right? Because you know that you want them to try it, but also not force them to eat to where, like my sister, she's still traumatized by green beans. And so like
I have a lima bean experience from growing up.
Right?
Yes.
And then it always sticks with you.
I'll never eat lima beans.
And that's where it's just this song and dance, but often with our youngest, and we are it's kind of a, hey, why don't we try this before you say. He will still not eat, he loves apples, will not eat applesauce, even as an infant. Everyone loves applesauce, would not eat it, and it's a texture thing for him.
I get that.
And just has just recently started eating like even things like macaroni and cheese, and for a long time no meat in the pasta, or wouldn't eat burgers. And now he actually does, those things. So I think for him, it's just as his taste buds change and as he gets older and sees what other people are doing and realizing like, oh, this was in my mind, it's not as much, I can't eat it. It was, things do change over time, which is super helpful. What are some of the stories that you've heard, or kind of the imaginative ways that parents are either sneaking in vegetables or are encouraging their families to kind of build right upon their nutrition?
Okay, I have a strong opinion, loosely held, which, if someone presents me with new information about it, I am anti-sneaky vegetables. I think you run the risk of like putting zucchini in muffins and then like ruining muffins as a vehicle for all other goodness because your kids notice the little bit of green. Mm-hmm. With a small exception of like pasta sauce. If your kids love pasta sauce, it's really easy to just pack veggies in there and not mention that they're there. But that feels less sneaky to me for some reason.
Well, because it's kind of already a vegetable-based dish. Yeah.
You're not going to notice if there's like some extra carrots or some grated cauliflower in there. And then you're just getting more nutrients into them. But I think when you sneak, also you like ruin the opportunity to present to them new vegetables that they might like too, right?
Absolutely.
So that's my thing on sneaky. But ways to introduce your kids to more vegetables, I think the family meal is so important. And I'm being careful to say meal because I think we, for a long time, I say we, like food media in general, was like, the family dinner is like the most important thing that you can do for your kids. But like a lot of busy working parents, dinner time is actually really hard. So can you do like family breakfast, or can you get like have Sunday lunch all together? But I think those meals where you can put the food on the table without any like judgment or instructions about how much they have to eat, like serve everything family style and have just like a joyful conversation or play a card game together. Those are actually like the opportunities for them to enjoy new foods where we're just taking all the pressure off, that I think a lot of parents, it's harder to do that, right? Than just be like, here's your you got to eat these green beans. It's like a Thursday night.
Turn on the timer.
Exactly. But if you can do it in like a more leisurely and fun way where it's not really about the food that's on the table, it's about the relationship around it, you see kids like really start to open up at the dinner
and embrace
table.
that. Right? And it builds your relationship. You always hear that. And I'll say we have been guilty about, especially with sports in the evening, like tonight, Lakers got tennis, and then we're gonna rush to do homework and it's just gonna be a really late night all together. And so I think that there are quite often I have felt like, oh my goodness, if I am not home and cooking by 5:30 and dinner's not on the table by 6 and we're not eating, and then it's like null and void, right? And when it's not, right? But sometimes you do let the schedule. So I love the prepping idea to where it's like, okay, this has been in the crock pot all day. All we have to do is make some rice, or all we have to do is, whatever the sides are. So then you can sit and enjoy. But I also know too that sometimes just letting the kids eat on the couch and let's watch a movie or something is also just being together, right? It's such intentionally being together, I would say.
And on that note, this conversation will be continued in the next episode of Heather's Most Precious. Heather's Most Precious is brought to you with love by the Hendrickson Agency, an insurance agency serving all of Georgia and Tennessee. The Hendrickson Agency, properly protecting your most precious possessions. Support for Heather's Most Precious is provided by Study.com, which offers SAT and ACT study materials and even has resources for AP and college credit courses. Listeners of Heather's Most Precious get 30% off their first 3 months of any subscription level with offer code PRECIOUS. Just go to Study.com and use offer code PRECIOUS at checkout. Heather's Most Precious is produced by Chattanooga Podcast Studios and is part of the Podnooga Network. Find out more at ChattanoogaPodcastStudios.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back soon with another episode of Heather's Most Precious.